And I think part of the reason that's happened is that some of us, and maybe I've been guilty, is that better? Better. Of not providing the right role models and the right example for our kids. Words like authenticity, integrity, transparency. That's what my mom and dad passed down to me. I bet that's what most of your parents and our grandparents have passed down to us. And it's certainly what I've tried to pass down to my kids, and I'm prayerful that they'll pass it down to my grandchildren. There's moments that leadership needs to take the stand. I have not addressed the press openly in a live press release since this saga began back in last September for our firm. But now is that moment. I met Chairman Beaver Applin in October of 2022. He came to my office in Dallas. He met with my oldest son, Patrick. My other son was on his honeymoon. And he brought with him the then Executive Director of Parks and Wildlife, Carter Smith. Both kind gentlemen in that meeting. Chairman Applin had two profound things to say. The first thing he said was, I'm a strong private property rights advocate, and by no means do I want to get in the middle of your private business transaction. The second thing that Chairman Applin said was that it's going to be incredibly embarrassing when next year in February, it's the 100th anniversary of Parks and Wildlife, if we lose that park. What I want to speak to you today is not about a park. And it's certainly not about my real estate deal. I want to talk to you today about something that's achieved through the calluses of our hands, the sweat of our brow, taking savings and converting it to risk. And many of you are shaking your head. I'm talking about private property rights. And in this particular situation, and in my strong personal opinion, the open and brazen abuse of power by politically appointed individuals, not elected individuals, and their weaponization of a state agency to wrongfully take something that's not theirs. And in my belief, if this will show today after my little introduction, by creating a false narrative full of inconsistent statements, misrepresentations, and rogue actions, all to accomplish a self-serving agenda, and in so doing, with total and complete disregard to the elected officials of your county, to the elected officials of Freestone County, as well as those who speak for the entire state of Texas. Those in the House Chamber, the representatives, and those as well in the Senate Chamber. Both bodies of our legislature, the 88th legislature, did not take to eminent domain. One sponsored by Charles Schwartner, your senator in this area for over 10 years. The other sponsored by your newest state rep, Angelia Orr. Both of those bills tied specifically to my transaction were struck down. Those individuals, they speak for the entire state of Texas. And then finally, the largest real estate group in the state of Texas. And I had a reporter ask me, are you part of that group? Absolutely, I'm part of that group. Just like if you're part of your local farm bureau, I'm part of that group. That group spoke specifically to the atrocity, representing over thousands of business owners, real estate owners, and private landowners. What I want to talk to you today, and this will get very factual. I made a big statement. I talked about misrepresentation. I talked about not full disclosure. I'm going to share some things with you today that are very factual. I think we've forgotten that we should always embrace the truth. And I can assure you, in this instance, my sons and I and our team, you heard me use the word transparency. We all need full transparency. And for a moment such as this, and I will be answering questions for the media afterwards, we have nothing to hide. We only seek the truth, and we only want to stop this abuse that's transpiring. So let me segue for the moment. A lot of water's gone under the bridge, so much I didn't know where to start. Because what I'm trying to do is synopsize for you what my sons and I in our firm and many of you in this community have been living for over a year. But let me start here. And I think it has to do with basically Parks and Wildlife. I want to start with an announcement that Parks and Wildlife put on their press release on June the 2nd. This was the exact representation of what Parks and Wildlife displayed on June 2nd to the general public and to the state of Texas. And I want to read what they said. TPWD extended a formal offer to Todd Interest, and with the full support of our commission, we were vocal in our intention to conduct realistic negotiations with realistic conditions. Unfortunately, Todd Interest would not work with us. We now need to pursue other options. Remember I talked about creating a narrative? Stay with me. I'm going to get there. To this end, it is with firm resolve that we move forward to protect Fairfield Lake from potential devastation. We offered a $20 million assignment fee plus reimbursement of up to $5 million in expenses as incentive for Todd Interest to relinquish its contract. That would have given us the opportunity to purchase Fairfield Lake State Park from Vistra. Instead, Todd has chosen to raise a public asset that is beloved by Texans and welcome more than 80,000 visitors each year. TPWD's mission compels us to try and save not only the park, but one of our state's finest fisheries. You know, I don't know which news organizations to turn on today. I don't know if it's CNN, if it's Fox, if it's MSNBC, or any of the other acronyms and initials. But I know this, do any of us really believe that we're getting accurate information from any one of those channels? A lot of news people here today. Many of them have astutely been writing and following and keeping up with this transaction and what's happened here today. And I want to respect the great journalism that we've seen exhibited. So let me unpack some of this. It's a great story to think that a real estate developer had been involved in realistic negotiations. Well, let's talk about what a negotiation is. The last time that I spoke to Chairman Applin was on February the 7th, when the CEO of Vistra, Jim Burke, the Dallas Morning News has all written about this, and this has been acknowledged by Jim Burke, the CEO of Vistra. So let me describe what Chairman Applin's really saying about a negotiation. Here was his offer. Mr. Todd, we would like for you and your sons to drop your real estate transaction, to walk away from it out of altruism. And in turn, we will reimburse your out-of-pocket costs. At Vistra, we would like for you to take $60 million, and we'll try to help you figure out some tax credits. So candidly, the CEO of Vistra and I, in a joint phone call, this is all public record, respectfully declined. My decline was, I respect your efforts, but my sons and I declined. And candidly, the CEO of Vistra made it very clear. Chairman Applin, in the event that the Todds do not close, and we believe that they will, we in turn will fully list this property again for $110 million and put it out of the property. So, why is that relevant? Because the theory that there's been negotiations happening, I never heard from Chairman Applin until after the third bill that was attempted to sabotage our transaction didn't happen in May. Okay? But let's talk about the offer that Chairman Applin's referring to the press that he made to us. Many of you own property, many of you own businesses. You understand what a real offer is. And you understand what the tail wagging dog means. You understand what all hat, no cattle means. Well, let me tell you what the offer was from Chairman Applin, and I have it here. Chairman Applin says, Mr. Todd, in support of the Texas legislature to protect and preserve the state park and to achieve private property rights through an arm's length transaction, we are now in a position to pursue acquisition. Remember those words. We are now in a position to pursue acquisition. Well, what were they doing last September and October? Were they not in a position to pursue the acquisition of a park? And what do they say? They say, we want to pay you. We propose to purchase your contract. We propose. I don't think Chairman Applin buys a Buc-ee's on the freeway and words it this way. We propose to purchase your property to purchase your contract for $20 million plus reasonable expenses up to $5 million. This assignment fee and due diligence will be paid at the closing of the property from the seller, along with reimbursement of earnest money. Then watch this move. TPWD would need the seller to extend the closing date to allow TPWD to conduct its own due diligence and potentially renegotiate the terms of the sales contract with TPWD. Because we cannot agree to, as a matter of state law or TPWD policy, and it assumes the contract from Todd Interest. If you're following me, would you shake your head? Thank you. I see a lot of heads nodding. So let's just unpack what's transpired. Chairman Applin has been using this as his bellwether, as his stalwart, to create a false image that a real estate developer, oh my gosh, he turned down $25 million. What Chairman Applin failed to say is that he didn't make an offer, he made a contingent proposal. He made a contingent proposal dependent upon him going to Vistra and making a deal with Vistra. And what he's not told is this conversation he had with Vistra, and I've spoken with Vistra. He first asked Vistra to throw in Colorado City, which is another lease park, for them to throw that in for free. He then asked Vistra to take far less than the $100+ million that I'm paying. And then, again, the misrepresentation and partial story. I've got 4 gentlemen in my office that are in their 30s. I've made my living, and I hope I'm a good steward with it. I'm coaching, I'm teaching. I hope I own things when I mess up and I make mistakes. I went to my young partners, 2 of which were my sons. And I said, gentlemen, for the first time in months, we've actually received something on Texas Parks and Wildlife letterhead. Because make no mistake, this reference of tireless negotiations and conversations, you heard me say that I've never heard from Chairman Applin from February the 7th until May. Shocking that Chairman Applin would reach out after the last bogus piece of legislation regarding water in the made-up story was struck down in the Senate Commission chambers under Water, Agriculture, and Resources. And by the way, the gentleman that led that effort was the distinguished Democratic Senator Nathan Johnson, who I had not met in person until the day of that meeting. So, he doesn't share also that on May the 23rd, my sons responded with a 3-page letter, heartfelt, to the point. I basically told them, guys, if the state has the money, you need to pause for a moment. Because this could be an incredible opportunity that the state has obviously blundered along the way, starting way back before I showed up. My sons responded, Chairman Applin, the offer of your timing is very poor. We're closing in a matter of days. But we will take $30 million for our position. Offered 25 in a contingent proposal. Chairman, we'll take $30 million for our position, but sir, you're going to have to show up quickly, and you're going to have to pay Vistra Energy every penny of the contract that we have with Vistra. You're going to have to show Vistra Energy where your money's coming from. It should be shocking, but it is the shocking truth for this reason that you feel the tone of my voice in the compilation of what I'm sharing this morning. Chairman Applin held his board meeting on the 24th. Chairman Applin never shared the letter that my sons gave him. Chairman Applin never talked about the negotiation they had with Vistra and that he couldn't close the transaction with them. But all Chairman Applin done is he sets up a pretext for the next dramatic piece of BS that's coming out of this department. So let's segue to that dramatic piece. By the way, I have all this here for you to review to take home with you. Let's go to the next slide. Something very interesting happened. I believe that when my sons responded back for $30 million, I have no factual data for this, but this is my firm conviction as a businessman owning his own business for 35 years. When my sons responded back at $30 million, you know what I think? I think Chairman Applin thought, I got them. They're not closing. Because why would they walk away from hundreds of millions of dollars of profit? Chairman Applin didn't read the letter. My sons and my daughter can all still quote Travis's last stand. One of them's got a tattoo on his back shoulder that says, come and take it. Okay? I've raised my boys in the same manner I see many of these young men over here today. Okay? Who's going to take it away from us? Something very interesting happened that we knew all along. And I want to point this out to you. On June the 1st, the day of our closing, nothing happened from the 24th of we never heard back from Chairman Applin on our offer. Never. On June the 1st, something very fascinating happens. In fact, if this happened in a corporate context, how many of you remember Pennzoil and Texaco? Remember that tortious interference that happened? Jim Burke, the CEO of Vistra, can't wait to send me this document. On June the 1st, over my left shoulder, Chairman Applin reaches out to Vistra. And he says, I want to reach out to you about some significant recent developments related to approximately 5,000 acres of land in Freestone County. At its May 25th meeting, Texas Parks and Wildlife authorized Parks and Wildlife to take all necessary steps to acquire the approximately 5,000 acres. To that end, TPW proposes to purchase the approximately 5,000 acres of land that Vistra was previously intending to sell to Todd Interest for $95 million. Now, here's the interesting thing that we never knew. Dependent upon the timing of the governor signing the supplemental spending bill, Senate Bill 30, and the Comptroller of Public Accounts transferring the funds to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. In addition, Texas Parks and Wildlife would need to conduct necessary due diligence. Find that fascinating. Because what I find fascinating, it's puzzled me and it's puzzled my sons, as to why, after my phone conversation in February the 7th, who led the effort? Who sponsored? Who was the catalyst that led the effort to all of a sudden tee up two bills in the Congress and the Senate regarding condemnation? Who led the charge for House Appropriation Committee meetings, for 4 meetings at the Cultural, Recreation, and Tourism Department that oversees Parks and Wildlife, and for a bogus bill created around some false assumption that Todd Interest was going to drain a lake, sell water, and lower the level of the lake and kill all the fish? Who led all that effort? And why was it led? And why did we not get a response from February the 7th until the last piece of legislation died? I'm going to tell you why. It's very clear. And if you listen to the testimony, if you read the information, you will hear it very clearly. Texas Parks and Wildlife with Senate Bill 30. Would you hand me the big, large document, the funding document, Vanessa, the big one? I want the big document of what Parks and Wildlife goes for their appropriations appointment. Okay, we'll set those out. This is a synopsis of a several hundred-page document. Our state works within a budget. God knows for 37 years of marriage, I've tried to stay in one. Okay? But within that budget, they have to request money from the legislature to pay for what we as taxpayers are taxed for. In September the 13th of 2022, Chairman Applin was in my office less than 30 days after then. Let me read some language to you. They requested $100 million. And here's what they requested it for. For 2024 and 2025 funding, request above reflects proposed acquisition of Fairfield Lake State Park and other strategic state park acquisitions from willing sellers as they become available. I'm going to read that again. From willing sellers as they become available. Does this passion in my voice make me feel like I'm a willing seller? Why didn't this information come out of the building? Why didn't Chairman Applin come into my office to my son and say, listen guys, I don't have the money right now. And in fact, you're going to see that in 2021 and in 2022, you're going to see quotes where Parks and Wildlife said, we got $3.5 million each of those 2 years to purchase property. And you're going to hear them talk about appropriations from the sales tax, and that's all true. Okay? But why all this time lag from February, offering me to step away, offering Vista $60 million? Why didn't the chairman just say, listen, I'm hopeful that if our budget gets approved, that we'll have $100 million that shows up sometime in June or July? You getting the picture? Shake your head if you're with me. Thank you. I want to wrap this up this morning and thank you for your patience. I think it was actually providential. I truly do. I think it was providential. That this morning, Chairman Applin wrote a full page, or a half a page editorial, and I'm assuming this editorial went all over the state of Texas. It certainly was printed in the Dallas Morning News. So why don't we just unpack a little further what I've just shared with you, what the chairman has chosen to say in his handwritten editorial submitted to the press. Can we put that up here? This is in the Dallas Morning News newspaper today. I'm going to read a synopsis to you on this. While there has been criticism of TWD for not acting sooner, the fact is We engaged in good faith discussions. Okay, hit pause. I would say discussions is the first accurate thing I've heard out of that gentleman's mouth in anything he said to the press. Let's go to the next part. It made multiple offers to purchase the 1,800-acre park site and even the entire 5,000-acre tract from both the original owner and the real estate developer. Okay, I can't speak for the original owner, but all I know is what Parks and Wildlife said, that they teamed up with the conservation group and offered the original owner $50 million because they only had $3.5 million for 21 and 22. You can fact check that. All I know is what they've done for us. And let me make it abundantly clear. We've never received a bona fide offer of any kind from Beaver Applet or for Texas Parks and Wildlife regarding the existing parkland of 1,800 acres that they lost their lease on. Never received an offer of any writing of any kind. Secondarily, the 5,000 acres of land that we've owned, we've never received an arm's length transaction from Texas Parks and Wildlife regarding the 5,000 acres of property we've owned. However, we did receive from Ken Paxton's office, I'm going to say that again, Ken Paxton and Beaver Applet. I know that I got a setup letter when we got our contingent proposal that you better take that offer, Mr. Todd, from the state, because we're the big bad state. I immediately got that letter, and you're going to hear in a minute from Charles Salazar and Ellie Vassallo. These gentlemen have tried have been involved in over 3,000 condemnation places in the state of Texas. Condemnation is not my first rodeo. I started early on in the 1990s with Mr. Vassallo. Charles and I had no gray hair, and Eddie had hair then. But let me make it clear. That is an outright false statement. Let's go further. These offers were rejected, including an offer to the developer for $20 million. Again, let's come clean about the offer you made, Chairman Applet. You didn't make an offer. You don't buy Buc-ee's that way. None of these people that own businesses and farmland and ranchland here would take an offer that way. But it darn sure makes great sound bites if you're trying to justify a position. A good friend reminded me this morning, nothing more fascinating than a creative man in the middle of self-justification. Think about that. Nothing more fascinating than a man in the middle of self-justification. But let's go further. Our only interest from the very beginning of this endeavor has been in preserving Fairfield Lake State Park. He goes on to say, even with our decision to condemn the land, we remain open to securing a deal that will save the state park and benefit all parties. I want to segue at this moment, and I'd like for the piece to go up that the Parks and Wildlife led their press release after they voted to do condemnation. Thank you. The June 10th statement by Texas Parks and Wildlife. This inconsistency, and I'm wrapping up, this inconsistency that I've shared with you, it should catch your attention. And I'm so thankful you came out on a hot day, and I don't think you came out on a hot day for Shawn Todd. I think you came out here to understand what the hell's happening to us with private property rights and runaway government. I truly believe that's why you're here. Thank you. Let me make this statement. Watch this situation. Look at the headlines. Thank you. We hear you, and the rest of the people have been quiet through this, and I'm going to ask to thank you all for the great decorum that you've all exhibited here today. It's been spectacular. Thank you. I want to address this, and then I'm going to ask Eddie Vassallo to come and speak. Commissioners authorize preserving state park. Okay, the headline. Commissioners authorize preserving state park. What they should have said is, commissioners voted to condemn 1,800 acres of land that they were only entitled to under a lease that they had for 50 years that expired. And then the accurate statement would be, and then we decided to condemn 3,200 acres of land and water that they've never had a right to, not in their lease. They were granted a free use to enjoy the water. They've never had a right to the water. And then I want you to think about this. I want to say this very humbly. I've met many of you, and you're great horse traders, and you built great businesses. Took me a couple times to get through Baylor University. My 18 ACT I hold high. Okay? Wasn't the smartest guy on the tree. But I know this. With respect to this action, the state has never dealt fairly, they've never dealt forthrightly, and they've never dealt openly. My sons and I closed with our partners. By the way, we have no foreign partners. I keep a little bit at post. And by the way, if I did have a foreign partner, so be it. This is America. We're comprised of a land full of foreigners. Okay? We don't have a foreign partner in this transaction. I've got about a dozen families, many of whom are building houses here that invested here because they love your lifestyle, they love their community. Wrapping up with this, and this is where I'm going to end this transaction. Vistra is the successor company of Texas Utilities. Texas Utilities was the largest bankruptcy in American history. Larger than General Motors, and for those of you that remember, and I certainly do, larger than the big mistake that Lee Iacocca made, Chrysler. I've met wonderful people that work for this entity. Quite frankly, I've been humbled by the people that work for this entity. But make no mistake, they were selling a ranch to a rich guy. I'm not rich enough to buy that ranch for myself. But I'm country boy smart enough to know they were selling a ranch and I was buying water. I was buying a reservoir with 45 miles to it. I was buying 1967 adjudicated water rights. And I damn sure knew that the state is planning on condemning 14,000 acres of land within 5 miles of the lake that I just purchased. And they've appropriated $510 million to do that. So the country boy me said, hey sons, hey partners, I think that lake is worth every penny of $100+ million. That's not our business, but it's a pretty dadgum hedge against inflation. Let's figure it out if we can make a real estate deal out of this. So what we've done is we've made a real estate deal out of this. And I want to dispel any notion that we're going to drain the levels of this lake. In fact, I want to tell you that there are zero economics in my business plan of monetizing that water right now. But I also want to tell you, I know that my bank appraised it for $238 million. And I know that baffles Chairman Applin. He's really wondering, how could you pay $100 million and pick up something for $238? Was he ever gone over here down the corner and bought a 1967 Pontiac and turned around and made $500 on it? Because you all have. And that's what we did. So ending it with this, I'm going to ask right now for Eddie Vassallo to speak for 1 minute, and I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you. Very quickly. Appreciate being here. I'm not talking about parks. I'm not talking about saving the park. Everybody wants parks. People who are supposed to save the park is Texas Parks and Wildlife. They had 5 years. 5 years after 50 years of free use of the park area, they had 5 years to do something. They did nothing. We represent nothing but landowners in this state and several other states, and I'll tell you that until this came up, I've never seen a situation where a landowner was trying to buy a piece of property in an open market, and he is threatened that if he buys the property, legal action will be taken against him by the state. I've never seen it happen, not in Texas, not in several other states that we've been in. The situation here, as we responded to Texas Parks and Wildlife several times, the situation here is simply that they missed for 5 years doing anything. For 5 years, they thought it was just fine to keep having the park for free. They knew Vistra was selling the park. They said, we're not interested. Vistra offered it to the state first, second, third, and fourth time from 2018 to 2022. Then it was put on the market. With the full knowledge of the state, it was put on the market. The most troubling thing for me is not the word park. The most troubling thing for me is the word property right. Every time you lose a property right, it doesn't come back. Every time the right to condemn, and let me tell you, not just the state and the county and the city, hundreds of private corporations have statutory rights to condemn. All the pipelines, power lines, so forth, have the right to condemn. But they have a right to do it under the specifics set out in the property code and the state law. And those specifics, not one was used by Texas Parks and Wildlife. not ever. The point of this situation today is they didn't want to buy a park. They didn't want to buy the property. They wanted to make it where no one could buy the park or the property by interfering with the transfer. And you think it's just for 5,000 acres? You think it's just for a property owner who wants to do development? When he won't stand up for the right, you don't have any right. Every time you lose one, it never comes back. Count up the rights you think you have someday, and you'll be shocked. They're very few. One of them is before anyone can take your property, they have to go through a process and procedure. They have to notice you. They have to tell you that they are going forward with condemnation. They have to give you the landowner bill of rights. They have to discuss with you their right to go on the property and make an appraisal. They have to provide an appraisal to you. They have to provide a negotiating period to you. They have to talk to you about what they're going to do. It's your property after all. The same rights you have in your home are the same rights that we weren't given for this piece of property. They're all the same rights. The right of notice, the right of getting an appraisal, the right of negotiation, the right of showing why you're using the park. On June the 2nd, Todd Interest became the owner of the acreage in Freestone County. They were the owners. Texas Parks and Wildlife had been on the property for free for 50 years. We get a notice that appraisers for Texas Parks and Wildlife with boats and hovercraft are on the property June 12th. We asked them to leave. They told us the Parks and Wildlife told them to stay. We were never noticed. Mr. Todd was never noticed. Big problem? Big situation? Yes, it's a big situation. It's private property. And on the memo in the Dallas Morning News today, it says, we will never take private property. This won't ever happen. Well, I'll just steal your car, but I promise I won't do it again. And that should take care of it. That doesn't take care of it. Everybody has a little group of rights to own property and to maintain the property free of anyone taking it. June 10th, on a Saturday, I listened for 2.5 hours to a meeting called by the Texas Parks and Wildlife. In a very solemn occasion, they said, gosh, we don't want to condemn. It's a terrible thing we have to condemn, but it's absolutely necessary. We won't ever do it again. And we want to assure all the landowners, the ranchers, and the farmers that this will never happen again. June 10th, on a Saturday, 2.5 hours. On June 15th, Mr. Shawn Todd received a letter that was written, certified mail, return receipt requested on June the 8th, telling him they're going to condemn this property. June 10th, they have this very solemn meeting that, gosh, we're going to have to vote. We don't want to vote. Gee, we don't want to do this. They had already done it 2 days before. So when you're looking at who says what and what was last said, just look at the letters, look at the information in writing, and then see if the information that was said today, we've made many offers. Fine. Just show the people the contract. Many offers to Vista. Show the people the contract. Many offers to Todd Interest. Show the contract. And if we're wrong, we'll say so. There's no contract, there's no information, and there's no rights given. That's the reason I'm here today. We know how to do a condemnation case. We know condemnation is a right. We know they can go forward, but they got to do it correctly. Thank you.
In closing, the most shocking thing. I'm not that big, but I'm a big boy. You get up the totem pole and you know what gets exposed. I got to tell you something. To work over a real estate developer to put us about one level above a personal injury lawyer, that's a joke, okay? But to work over the citizens of Texas with a sham board meeting called on a Saturday morning, for Texas Parks and Wildlife to run a public opinion poll on condemnation with less than 300 responders, and then to report the percentages of those in favor of condemnation, come on, we're better than that. And for Beaver Applin, 2 days before his puppet court hearing, his puppet board meeting, to send condemnation offers to my office, surely we're above that. Surely we're above that as a people. Over a dozen people came down, some of whom in this crowd were there, spoke heartfelt, wrote tender letters, all of which I respect what they were saying about keeping a park. But why didn't the chairman just speak up and say, I'm doing the same thing here that I've been doing to the Todds for the last several months. I'm going to go ahead and be above the elected officials. I'm going to be above the local officials, the state officials, and I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do. And I'm going to go ahead and send the man his condemnation papers, and this is just a sham meeting. Pretty strong words for a 5'10" boy from Ada, Oklahoma. Okay? So, what the state's going to say is, oh, no, that was just an offer. You heard me say very clearly, I've never received an offer from the state of Texas to buy my property. Now let me say with one caveat. The offer that I received, Eddie, is that a condemnation offer? Done poorly. No, in the wrong way, done poorly, but it ain't a friendly offer. So I leave this with this statement. I'm asking the men on this park board to do what we've all taught our kids. Accountability in one man making up his own decision. I'm asking you to broaden the circle. You've been married 37 years, I've broadened the circle more than once, okay? Get some other people speaking into this situation to understand what really has occurred. I'm asking that the board members, Jeff Hildebrand, Dick Scott, Blake Rowley, Mr. Bass from Fort Worth, the young lady who's the rancher on the board, surely you're not aware of everything that's happened, what I've just shared. And I'm not asking that you do one thing as a matter of courtesy. I'm asking that you respect the men and lady of Freestone County, one, and address the letter that you've never responded to from them. Are you that damn busy? I'm asking that you give them the courtesy to sit down and let them express what they believe is best for their county. Chairman Applin, the Park Department doesn't speak for the entire state of Texas. The legislature speaks for the entire state of Texas. And these county commissioners speak for Freestone County. There's some people, I believe, here in Leon County here today. Anybody from Leon County? We got some people here from Leon County. Those county commissioners are concerned. Anybody here from Limestone County? We got people from Limestone County that they know what their county is going to happen. So let's broaden the circle. Let's have an honest conversation. Let's go back to what your money was allocated for. Buying a piece of property from a willing seller. Let's don't hide behind being a day late, a dollar short, and not having the money. Because I can assure you, that's not what the people are here about. If you're not for eminent domain, I'm not going to call you out, but would you clap with me? Thank you for your time. I'm asking now, I believe that Lloyd Lane, one of the county commissioners here, is going to speak. After Lloyd speaks, I promise the press I will field as many questions as you want to field, as long as we stay in good decorum. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
I think the main thing that I wanted to say today was the disappointment by not getting any response from the letter that we sent to Texas Parks and Wildlife Commissioners. It just shows a disrespect for the information that we get as commissioners, because it's a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of people here today. Today, this is not about a development. This is about securing private property rights. And that's why the majority of the people are here, and I appreciate y'all coming. I just think we need to send a message, and we're going to ask again for them to please at least recognize the letter that we sent. And we ask that they stop this eminent domain case right now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to address questions from the media. I would ask if you would state your name and what group you're with. And I don't know how many we have here or not. And Brett Shipp, I have seen so much of what you posted and your followers, so you get the first question, sir. You asked me, does the Texas Parks and Wildlife have the right of eminent domain? It's my understanding that they do. Yes. What's an issue now? In Candid, have you been listening the last 30 minutes while I've been talking? Okay. It's property rights. And the issue of commissioners, let me be more specific, Brad. Board appointments. Do we have anybody here from the school board? I'm not going to ask you to speak. Anybody here from the school board at Freestone? Thank you. Fairfield Schools? Thank you. You were elected, or maybe you were appointed. So the issue here is, these board members are appointed. They should be diplomats. They should be statesmen. These board members have chosen to override what the elected public officials have done, saying we don't want eminent domain, Brett. There have been 2 bills in the legislature that have been brought. Hang on, let me finish my question. 2 bills in the legislature that were supported, and then another bill. And then they've usurped what the county wants. And the difference is, Brett, Parks and Wildlife doesn't speak for the entire state of Texas. They speak for people that are loyal and faithful to that cause, which I support completely. Next question. Anybody else? Okay. I want to thank you all for your time, and I appreciate you making it here today. I see Waco, I see Dallas, I see many stations. Thank you for making the drive down here this morning. Have a good afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you all. There's lunch over here for several hundred people. Hope you enjoy it. Bye-bye.